Welcome to Valladolid, known as Pueblo Mágico and the colonial heart of eastern Yucatan. Valladolid is a stunning pastel-colored treasure that feels like stepping back in time. It's becoming a top choice for expats moving to Mexico, but as this small city grows in popularity, is it actually a practical place to call home? Well, in this video, we'll cover everything from the pros and cons of living in Valladolid, the beautiful highlights of the different neighborhoods we recommend, what the rental market looks like, the healthcare and infrastructure realities that you'll face living here, and all the essential details you'll need to know before deciding if this charming city belongs on your relocation shortlist. Now, before we get into all the things you need to know about moving to and living in Valladolid, you may be wondering, why should I listen to her? So, hello! If you're new around here, my name is Mariana. I run Mexico Relocation Guide, and since 2019, we've helped hundreds of thousands of people move to Mexico the right way, using our up-to-date online guide, which many people rely on as a single trusted source for moving to Mexico with less stress and less headaches. And most people come to us because they're overwhelmed. They've watched tons of YouTube videos, they've read Facebook group posts, and now they're reading or hearing conflicting answers about everything from cost of living to residency visas, healthcare, safety, and other important topics for their research on moving to Mexico. So that's why we created a realistic and complete website with a variety of free resources for foreigners moving to Mexico, and of course, our paid complete Mexico relocation guide. So if you'd like to learn more about a free resource that I have for you guys, type yes in the comments so I can give you a link to our 2026 free report on moving to Mexico. Okay, now let's jump right into what it's like to live in Valladolid. The vibe in Valladolid is a blend of Spanish colonial architecture and everyday Mayan culture. It's a smaller city where daily life still revolves around the main plaza, and then most things move at a slower, more traditional pace. The Plaza Principal is the focal point, anchored by the San Servacio Church, just a short walk away from Calzada de los Frailes, which has been carefully restored and now includes a mix of small boutiques, cafes, and local shops, which are all set in historic buildings. It's one of the more polished areas of town, but it still feels connected to the rest of the city rather than separated from it. Now, Valladolid in general is quiet, especially compared to Mérida or the coastal town. Also, what makes it kind of unique is you'll hear a lot of Mayan being spoken regularly, and you'll find local Yucatecan food pretty much anywhere, like longaniza, cochinita pibil, and those kinds of things. Now, like Mérida, Valladolid does have a reputation of being very safe and community-oriented. But that being said, Valladolid is not going to be for everyone. It's smaller, it's hotter, and slower paced than many people expect, especially if you're comparing this city to other popular hotspots in Mexico. So, if you're used to convenience and constant options, the pace here can maybe feel a little limiting. So let's talk about what that actually looks like day to day to see if Valladolid is the right place for you. Now, if you're wondering where it is, it's perfectly positioned in the heart of the Yucatan Peninsula in Mexico. It sits right in the middle of the Golden Triangle, almost exactly halfway between the city of Mérida and the bustling area of Riviera Maya, which includes Cancún, Playa del Carmen, and then all the smaller beach towns in that area. Now, this central location makes it an ideal home base for those who want easy access to the Caribbean beaches and the state capital without living in the middle of the heavy tourist crowds. It has a population of around 88,000 people, and that's why it has that small city feel where you have all the essentials nearby, but you never feel overwhelmed by the scale of it. Now, let's talk about the weather, because just like in Mérida, or all of Yucatan really, Valladolid is pretty hot. It's inland and surrounded by jungle, so the humidity here can feel very thick, especially during the rainy season. During the summer months, temperatures usually are in the high 90s or low 100s. Now, the good news is that the quote-unquote winter here is pretty comfortable, with dry, breezy days in the 80s that make walking through the historic barrios a dream. However, you should be prepared for the tropical climate. Having air conditioning isn't just a kind of would like to have here, it's an essential part of daily life if you really want to be able to be comfortable. So now that you have a feel for what daily life in Valladolid is like, let's talk about where people actually choose to live and what rentals look like in these neighborhoods. The Centro Histórico is the most obvious starting point, especially if you're drawn to colonial architecture and being able to walk almost everywhere. This is the core of the city, centered around the Plaza Principal with the San Servacio Church, the Municipal Palace, and many of Valladolid's traditional restaurants right in the heart of it. Now, it does see steady foot traffic during the day from visitors coming in from the coast, but if you step just a few blocks off the main streets, you'll find quieter side roads with solid colonial homes that stay cooler inside and feel much more residential. Now, here's a local tip. If you choose the Centro in Valladolid, you'll never need a car. You can walk basically to the main market, the pharmacies, and all the cultural events. It's a perfect choice for those who want to be fully immersed in these like Pueblo Mágico, quote-unquote, energy, and don't mind a little more foot traffic outside their front door. To give you an example, a traditional two-bedroom colonial home right in the heart of Centro typically rents for around 16,000 to 22,000 pesos. That's around 860 to about 1,200 USD in today's exchange rate. Next up is Barrio de San Juan. Now, this is located just a few blocks south of the main plaza. San Juan is often described as the most authentic neighborhood in Valladolid because it's centered around a large and nice park, and this area is much more residential feeling and less touristy feeling than the Centro. Now, a local tip here is that San Juan is famous for its sense of community. So this is where you'll see neighbors sitting out on their porches in the evening and kids playing soccer in the plaza or in the park. It's also home to some of the best hidden gem eateries where you can get authentic cochinita pibil. It's a great choice if you want a quieter, family-oriented vibe while still being a 10-minute walk from basically everything. And to give you an example of a rental here, a comfortable traditional 3-bedroom house in the San Juan neighborhood will rent for about 13,000 to about 17,000 pesos per month. Now, in today's exchange rate, that's about 700 to about 945 USD. Now, if at this point you're wondering, why do we never cover home sales? It's because I really encourage you to rent in Mexico before you ever buy anything. If you want to be able to understand why this is and other rental tips, get my free rental tips email series. I cover in it, where to find the best rentals like the locals would, how to work with a realtor, how to know what scams to avoid, and even a Spanish cheat sheet that you can use before you sign your lease. It also includes questions you should ask before you agree to anything and how renting in Mexico is very different than if you're coming north of the border. So I'll leave the link in the description of the video. Now, finally, we have Barrio de Cisal, and this is arguably the most prestigious and trendy area in Valladolid. Living here means that you'll see colonial history meets a modern bohemian lifestyle. It's home of the famous Calzada de los Frailes, which is the most photographed street in town. It's lined with boutique hotels, artisanal shops, and very high-end dining. Now, the local tip here is that living in Cisal feels like living in a postcard. Every night, the neighborhood gathers at the convent for the video mapping show that lights up the historic walls. It's an upper middle class area that attracts many expats because it strikes a perfect balance between ancient history and modern luxury. So you'll see a lot of wealthy Mexican families and those kinds of bigger homes that you would expect in a middle to upper class neighborhood. To give you an example, a stylish renovated 2-bedroom house in Barrio de Cisal typically rents for 20,000 to 26,000 pesos per month. That's about 1,100 to about 1,500 US dollars, depending on the exchange rate. They usually have a small pool on site that's private to your home. So what about utilities and the overall cost of living? Now, utilities in Valladolid are pretty typical for the Yucatan, considering the local climate is what really drives most people's cost. You see, in Mexico, electricity is the biggest variable depending where you live. Now, the country subsidizes electricity for many households, but only up to a certain amount. And because Mexico has a lot of different microclimates, it has everything from mountains, deserts, jungles, to everything in between. So usually, the hotter the area, the less subsidy that the government offers. Obviously, because it's hot, humid, and so air conditioning gets used more often than people usually expect. Now, even then, compared to many homes in the United States, especially in the South where heat is pretty high, electricity here is still a bargain. So for a standard 2-bedroom home, a monthly bill will usually land around 1,200 to 1,800 pesos. So that's about 66 or 67 USD to about 100 USD. Now, if you're running multiple AC units or living in a high ceiling colonial home, then that number usually can climb quickly. Now, water is very inexpensive, so often a flat fee of around 150 to 200 pesos or about 8 to 11 USD. Natural gas is used all over Mexico for cooking and for heating water. And a 30-kilo tank refill will usually run you about 450 pesos or about 25 US dollars. Now, this is the kind of tank that will last about 2 months at moderate use. So it just depends on how much you're cooking, how much clothes you're washing, and those kinds of things. And then, of course, high-speed fiber internet is available in most central neighborhoods and will cost around 550 pesos a month or about 32 US dollars. Now, on average, if you total this up, your total monthly utilities will range around 2,200 to about 2,800 pesos per month, or about 120 to about 155 US dollars a month for a couple living in Valladolid. Now, let's look at your total monthly cost of living in Valladolid, including your rent. So I'm going to give you 2 scenarios. Scenario A is the Pueblo life kind of budget. That is, if you choose a traditional home in a local neighborhood like San Juan, you shop primarily at the local municipal market. Of course, you shop at big box supermarkets from time to time. And when you do eat out, you choose the typical cocinas económicas instead of going to high-end restaurants. Then in this scenario, you can live a very comfortable life on 1,400 to about 1,800 US dollars per month. I mean, very comfortable. Scenario B, the colonial boutique budget. So this is higher end. If you prefer a restored colonial home in somewhere like Cisal, you eat at the trendy cafes on Calzada de los Frailes. Maybe you keep your air conditioning running all day, or if you have a larger home with multiple AC units, then you might spend closer to 2,200 to about 3,200 US dollars per month for a couple. So you see how a couple can easily live a very comfortable life in Valladolid on less. But I do want to say that having said that, you still have to consider whether you qualify for a residency visa with today's solvency requirements. If you want to know what today's solvency requirements are, visit our free residency visa guide, so I'll leave a link in the description. Now, shopping for food in Valladolid is where you really feel the soul of the city. While it is a smaller town, you still have a surprisingly good mix of traditional and modern shopping options. Now, the heartbeat of the city here and in many parts of Mexico is the mercado. This is where you find your daily stop for the freshest fruits and the freshest meats and a lot of amazing spices and things that you might not find at a big box grocery store. Now, in Valladolid, you have the Mercado Municipal, and this is where you can find tropical fruits, local honey, and the famous Valladolid longaniza, which is kind of a chorizo. It's a vibrant, affordable, and the best way to support local Mayan producers. Now, a local tip that while the Mercado is the most famous spot, there is also a good alternative you want a quicker option, and that is Frutería El Mayordomo. It's a really nice gem for daily errands. It truly rivals the municipal market. It's clean, it's organized, it carries high quality fresh produce, and a lot of local staples. So it's the kind of place where you can quickly get in and out without the crowds of the main mercado. Now, for your one-stop shopping, the Super Chedraui is the largest and most modern supermarket in town. Now, you also have Bodega Aurrera and Soriana Super. Now, these cover all your pantry staples like rice, beans, steaks, chicken, eggs, bread, anything that you would find at a big box supermarket. So what happens if you get hurt or ill? Well, healthcare in Valladolid is pretty solid for everyday need. For routine checkups, minor illnesses, or prescriptions, there are plenty of local private clinics and pharmacies like Farmacias del Ahorro or similares, where you can see a doctor on site for very little out of pocket and without having to pull out insurance or really have an appointment. It's just a walk-in situation. Now, for most medical emergencies or basic procedures, you have two facilities that are recommended, like Centro Médico San Lucas and Clínica San Juan, which handle care right in town. These will cover you for the majority of emergency situations. But where Valladolid really works in your favor is if you need more specialized care that you might not be able to find in town, because you're almost evenly positioned between two major medical hubs, and that's Mérida and Cancun. You see, Mérida is often the first place that people think of in Yucatan because it has great hospitals like El Faro de Mayab and Star Medica, which offer top care. But Cancun is just as accessible and really, depending on traffic, sometimes even faster than getting to Mérida. It has hospitals like Galenia and Hospital Cancun, which are popular with expats because of their modern facilities, their widely English-speaking staff, and their ease of payments. But the bottom line is that while you may not have every specialty in Valladolid itself, you do have great hospitals that offer international standard healthcare in realistically about 1.5 to 2 hour drive in either direction. So how will you get around? Well, getting around Valladolid is straightforward because the city is pretty compact. Now, within the historic barrio, you'll find that probably walking or biking most places is how people get around. The streets are pretty flat, distances are short, and it's an easy city to navigate without relying on a car for every errand. Now, for longer trips across town, Valladolid now has a Va-y-Ven bus system. It's modern, it's air-conditioned. These are buses that are used all over the city. They're cleaner, more reliable, and far more comfortable than the older colectivos. And they have routes like Circuito Oriente, Circuito Poniente, which is basically east and west, and the Ruta Transversal make it easy to reach outer neighborhoods or across the city without much hassle. You're also about 15 minutes from the Tren Maya station, which connects you to other parts of the peninsula, including Mérida, Cancun, and several smaller towns along the route. It's a useful option if you plan to travel regionally without having to drive. Now that said, you'll probably want a car to be living in Valladolid. Yes, while walking and buses work well inside the city, having your own vehicle is what really opens things up. Valladolid is surrounded by cenotes, ruins like Ekbalam, and smaller towns that are hard to reach without one. And you really want to get out and explore if you're going to be living in any part of Mexico. So a car also makes those 90-minute drives to Mérida or Cancun for things like shopping or specialized medical care much easier and much more flexible. So we do consider that having a car might be very convenient. Now at this point, if you're watching the video, you're probably wondering, all right, this sounds like a really great city, but what are some cons of living here? And like anywhere in Mexico, Valladolid has clear advantages and also some cons that you should be comfortable with. On the plus side, it's very safe, it's quiet, it has a strong sense of community, life here moves slower, and for many people, that's actually the appeal. The cost of living is still very reasonable, especially when compared to other expat communities or compared to the coast, and especially when it comes to rent and local food. Location-wise, you're really well positioned between Mérida and the Riviera Maya, which has Cancun, Playa del Carmen, and then of course Tulum and all the cenotes and archaeological sites all around you. Now on the downside, the heat is very real here. This is inland Yucatan, and it can feel very heavy and intense, especially in the summer. Now also, English is not widely spoken in Valladolid, so Spanish is important for day-to-day life. And while infrastructure is improving, you won't have the same level of mall shopping or dining or hospital options that you would find in larger cities like Mérida or Cancun or somewhere else in Mexico that has a large city. So that's why I always say you should visit first. You should really spend some time in the different neighborhoods, see how the heat and pace feel to you, come in the summer, come in the winter, talk to people who actually live here, because Valladolid can be a great fit, but only if you know exactly if it works for you. So I hope this deep dive in the heart of Yucatan helps you decide if Valladolid is the right place for your next chapter. If you're feeling like you need to know more about moving to Mexico with total confidence, I invite you to come visit us at mexicorelocationguide.com. This is where you'll find more information about our private relocation tours in Valladolid and 60 other cities across Mexico, where you'll find more information about our complete Mexico relocation guide, which helps you move to Mexico the right way, and plenty of free resources to get you started. You can find all the links in the description of this video. So again, my name is Mariana. This is not goodbye. This is just an hasta luego. I hope you liked this video of Valladolid and you will give me a like. We'll see you in the next video.